Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Sunday night video. This week I am covering the strange case of William Field and the attempted murder of his mother Anne Field, which took place in Byker in 1903. I hope you will find it interesting. William Field was born in Staffordshire in around 1880 to parents Charles and Anne, and was one of at least 5 children. He worked as a barber, but in 1903 he had been out of work for quite some time. He was not described as someone who was addicted to drink, but it was suggested that he did like to drink. He had not been living at home at the time the crime was committed, and actually seems to have been homeless. However, it is never explained why he had not returned to live at home with his parents. Anne Field, the victim and also the mother of William Field, was born in around 1844 in Staffordshire. Her parents are unknown. She had married Charles Field, and the family had eventually moved to the northeast, settling in Grey Street in Byker. Charles worked as a coal dealer, or simply a coalman, and Anne would sell coal to people from her backyard. Neither Anne nor her husband were described as being drinkers, and both were actually described as being hard workers. Before we go any further, can I just say, if you do enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here or haven't already done so, then do please consider subscribing to the channel to help support the content we create. It really is very much appreciated. It is completely free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you any money, but it really does help to support the channel. And as always, I just want to add that I do record these stories live, so I do sometimes make mistakes, which I always try to rectify. So I hope this does not spoil your enjoyment of the video. On the night of November the 14th, Anne Field returned to her home in Grey Street in Byker at around 9 p.m. She usually sold some of her coal at night, so she went into the kitchen to open the back door, ready for her customers to arrive. As she opened the door, she spotted her son William in the yard. William walked up to her and simply said, "What have you got to say?" Anne, not knowing what he meant, did not reply. Without warning, William suddenly began to attack his mother with a hammer, hitting her on the head several times until she fell to the ground unconscious. William then ran away. When Anne awoke a few moments later, she found herself lying on the ground with blood all around her. She cried out murder as loud as she could, and one of the neighbours heard her cries. The neighbour then went to find Anne's older son, Alfred. When Alfred arrived, he found his mother in a very bad way. He went in search of a policeman, and a doctor was sent for. Anne had told him William had attacked her, and William was now nowhere to be seen, so the police immediately began to search for him. William was finally found in Newcastle around 2 days later and was arrested for the attempted murder of his mother Anne. Dr. Pratt had dressed the wounds to Anne's head, and she had been sent to bed to rest. She was very ill, and the doctor was worried that she may not survive. William would appear at Newcastle Police Court several times between November of 1903 and January of 1904. He had been remanded each week, as Anne was not well enough to attend the hearing. She was eventually well enough to attend in mid-January of 1904. And Anne had been allowed to sit down as she was still quite unwell, and her head was bandaged, and the court hearing was the first time she had been out of her house since the attack. Anne said she was 60 years old and lived in Grey Street in Byker with her husband Charles and several of her children. She said prior to the 14th, William had not been living at home. She said on the night of the 14th, she'd returned home around 9 p.m, and at 9:30 she went to the back door to open it, ready for her customers to come and buy their coal. She said when she looked outside, she saw William standing in the backyard. He walked up the stairs and said to her, "What have you got to say?" She said she did not know what he meant, so she did not reply. She said he then suddenly began to hit her with something, but she didn't know what it was, as she did not see what was in his hand. She said he hit her twice on the head, and she became unconscious. She said when she woke up, she was lying on the floor and her head was bleeding. She said she shouted for help, shouting out "murder," and her neighbour, Mrs. Seymour, heard her and came to see what was wrong. Mrs. Seymour went to look for her son Alfred, and he sent for the police and a doctor. She said the hammer that had been shown in court that day was one she used for breaking up the coal. However, she did not know if this was what William had hit her with. When asked, she said she had not fallen out with William and had not given him any reason to attack her. She said the last time she had seen him, a few days before the attack, he had asked for some money, but she had not given him any, and he had told her he would hang for someone. She did not know what he meant by this either. She said William was married but was no longer living with his wife. She said he had not been asked to return to the family home by his father, but she did not explain why. She ended by saying she was sure it was William who had attacked her. Alfred Field of Byker said Anne was his mother and William was his brother. He said Mrs. Seymour had come to find him and told him his mother had been attacked. He said when he arrived at the house, his mother was lying on the floor and there was blood all around her. He said he helped her to the sofa and a doctor was sent for and he went to look for a policeman. He said his mother had told him that William had attacked her and his brother was nowhere to be seen. He said William had not been working for a long time and had been sleeping in his father's stable for quite some weeks. When asked, he said it may have been dark, but there was plenty of light in his mother's kitchen and she would have easily been able to see who had attacked her. Dr. Pratt of Heaton Road said he had been called to the home of the Fields on the night of the 14th. He had found Anne lying on a sofa covered with blood. He said she had several wounds to her head and he believed that her skull was fractured in a couple of places. He had put 21 stitches into the wounds. He said the wounds could easily have been caused by the hammer that had been shown to the courtroom. Dr. Pratt was asked how Anne was now, and he said she'd been very ill at first and was in a dangerous position where it was not known if she would recover, but he said she was now doing well, but would never be the same again. He said great violence must have been used to cause the wounds to her head. Sergeant Shield said Alfred had told him what had happened on the night of the 14th and he had gone with him to the house. He said he found a blood-stained hammer in the kitchen and also found blood on the kitchen floor and walls. Detective Carson said he had arrested William 2 days after the attack in a cafe in Newcastle. He said when William was arrested and charged with attempted murder, he had said, "I could have left town yesterday when I read about the attack in the papers, but I thought it was no good doing that after what I had done." Superintendent Scott stated that William had several previous convictions. When he said this, he made it sound as if he had some for similar offences. However, it seems that William's previous offences had been for things such as stealing, abusive language and loitering. Mr. Ward, who was acting on behalf of William, stated that he had been out of work for quite some time and had been sleeping rough. He said he now had a poisoned foot, and this was because he had walked several miles one day in search of a job that he had not got. He also stated that on the day of the attack, William had not eaten for quite some time, and some of his friends, instead of buying him food, had bought him drink. He said while he could not truly explain why William had attacked his mother, he felt it needed to be noted that he had been drunk on the night in question and not really aware of what he had been doing. No further evidence was given, and the magistrates, after a very brief discussion, committed William to trial on a charge of wounding with intent to murder. The trial took place in Durham in February of 1904 before Commissioner Bray. William, who pleaded not guilty to the charge, was undefended, but it's not clear why, as the solicitor at the magistrate's hearing had asked for him to receive funding for a solicitor, but it seems it did not happen. And at the start of the trial, William asked for a defence counsel, and the judge told him, "It is too late now to apply. I will take care of your interests." William replied, saying, "I applied in January and was granted a defence counsel." The judge told him if you had been granted a defence, you would have one now. William then said, "I think it's only right that I have one now." The judge, in a final response, said, "I cannot grant one now, it is too late, but you can rest assured I will look after you." And William's final response to this was, "I cannot speak against anyone here, as I am not an educated man." However, the trial still continued. Anne Field again appeared with bandages on her head. She was still not well and was again allowed to sit while she gave her evidence. She did not add any new information to her story other than to say she thought William had been sober at the time he had attacked her. Alfred Field stated that as far as he was aware, his brother was trying to find work. He had not worked for some considerable time, but had been a barber by trade. He said on the night in question he had found the blood-stained hammer beside his mother. William spoke to ask Alfred if he had been in the army. Alfred said yes, he had. William asked him if he had been bought out, and Alfred said he had. William said, did this not happen twice? And Alfred said yes, it had. William then objected to Alfred giving evidence against him, stating, I do not think it is right that a deserter should give evidence against me. The judge asked Alfred if he had deserted from the army, and Alfred said yes, he had. However, it does not seem to have made any difference, as by this time Alfred's evidence had already been heard, and the judge did not ask for it to be struck from the records. Helen Seymour said she also lived in Grey Street in Byker. She said she lived in the flat below the Fields. She said on the night of the 14th of November 1903 she had been at home when she had heard heavy footsteps in the kitchen above her. She heard someone slam the door and run down the front stairs. She said she had looked out but did not see anyone as it was too dark. She said the door slamming was so loud she had rushed to see what was wrong. It had shook her own doors. She said it was shortly after this that she heard Anne shouting out murder and had found her on the floor covered in blood. She had then gone to find her son, Alfred. Detective Carson spoke of arresting William in Newcastle and repeated the statement made by William at the time. William asked him if he was sure this was what he had said. Were his notes correct? And Detective Carson said they were quite correct. Detective Lennox, who had been with Detective Carson when William was arrested, confirmed the same details regarding William's statement. William then spoke to him and asked him, and how many times have you rehearsed that statement to get it correct? This caused some laughter in the courtroom. William then gave evidence on his own behalf. He stated that he had not been anywhere near his mother's house on November the 14th. It had not been him who had attacked her. He also stated that he had not said he would leave town or admitted to the police officers that he was guilty of the crime. He said they were mistaken and he was completely innocent. I did not find any details of the summing up from the prosecution or from the judge, and the jury, after retiring for a very short time, returned a verdict of guilty of attempted murder. The judge then addressed William, stating that he felt he had had a very fair and proper trial, and he believed the jury were correct in finding him guilty of this most brutal and unprovoked attack on his mother, and he felt there was no doubt that he had intended to kill her, adding that he felt drink had been involved. Had William's friends given him food and not beer, this may never have happened. He then sentenced William to 5 years penal servitude. William responded to this by saying, I will remember someone when I do come out. He was then removed from the dock and returned to Durham prison. I did not find any further details of William after this date, so it is not known which prison he was sent to serve out his sentence or any details of when he was released, but it does not seem that he ever returned to his family in Byker. Anne recovered well, although it is not clear if she was ever the same as she had been previously, and she continued to live at the family home in Byker for many more years to come, as she was still living there with her husband in 1911. William's father Charles did not give evidence at either the magistrate's hearing or at the trial, and no details were ever given as to why, as he was still clearly living in the family home and would have known if his son had fallen out with his mother at any time. I found this to be a very strange story, as I find with most cases. I could not find any real motive for William attacking his own mother. The only tiny details we have are that his mother had refused to give him money, he was sleeping rough, and the family had not asked him to return home. Perhaps this was enough to make him angry when drunk to attack his mother, but it does not seem like enough motive to me. And I wonder, as I often do, if there is more to this story than meets the eye. Perhaps the family had argued about something else and William felt his mother was against him, but, as is often the case, nothing was said to back this idea up, so we shall never know for sure. Were the jury correct to find William guilty of attempted murder? Well, I do think they were, as his mother was quite sure it was William who had attacked her, even if she'd not known for sure what he had attacked her with. And William did make a partial confession when he had been arrested, saying he was guilty. So I do not think that they really had any other choice. Was 5 years too long? Well, again, I think not, as the attack was brutal and his mother probably never fully recovered from it. But what do you think? Do you think there was more to this case than we were told? Was there an underlying argument between William and his mother? Or do you think he was just angry that she had refused him money a few days before the attack, and because he had been drinking, he acted completely out of character and attacked her? Because although he had been arrested for things in the past, they had been cases of theft or bad language, never assault. Do you think the jury were correct to find him guilty, and do you think 5 years was too long, or maybe not long enough? Do please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I do hope that you have found this very sad and tragic story interesting, and I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again next